What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I've got some early exclusive gameplay on the brand new Season 1 maps that are coming, as well as some gameplay with the MWIII primarily. And I captured this at the Sledgehammer Studio last week. Activision flew me out, put me up at a hotel so I could attend this event, capture some gameplay to share with you guys, as well as talk with the devs a little bit. We did have a Q&A session with the devs, and we learned quite a bit, and I can now finally share all of that with you guys today. Now, just a quick note on the gameplay. I realize the quality of the capture isn't as good as what you would normally expect from me, and that's just due to the fact that we are using the setups that they have there at the studios, and we were limited in certain ways with that. But diving right in, I'm going to share my impressions of the maps first, and then we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty details with a lot of the things that we learned from the devs, some of which I think you'll find quite interesting. And the first gameplay you're seeing here, this is on the map called MWIII, and it is quite a small map, as you may or may not have noticed by now. Although I would say it's at least big enough that there's a little bit of room to breathe, a little bit of room to think about what you're doing. It's not like Shipment or Rust, for instance, and I do quite like that. There's a lot of action to be found, but it's not completely mindless chaos. After that, at the launch of Season 1, we're going to have access to Greece, and here's some gameplay on that map, and I actually really liked Greece. Greece is a more medium to even maybe like medium-large map is how I would describe it. It is a very linear map, and there's a decent amount of complexity as well. There's lots of different areas where you can cut between the various lanes. There's also water on this map, so you will be able to implement water into your gameplay, but I did find that the water is not really like a necessary part of the gameplay on this map. You can use it if you'd like to, but I never really felt like I needed to go into the water in order to navigate the map properly. But then after that we have Rio, and this one isn't coming with the launch of Season 1, it is coming later on in the season. And with this one, I describe it as a medium-sized map. There's a main building in the middle, it's a mall or something like that, and at least when I played this at the studio, that's kind of where everyone was gravitating toward, and that's where most of the fighting was taking place. Whereas all of the areas around that middle building are more open areas that are designed much more for flanking, and that's generally what I was trying to do, is flank around and then shoot people in the back while they're fighting in the middle. And those are the three brand new 6v6 maps we're going to be getting throughout Season 1. And honestly, based on the limited experience I had, I don't really have any serious complaints with any of them. I do have some concerns about spawns on MWIII, but I mean, anytime you have a map that small and you're playing 6v6, there are bound to be some spawn issues, so we'll have to wait to see once we get it in the hands of the public to see just how bad the spawns end up being. But I think out of all of these maps, Greece was actually my favorite. I really like linear maps. I think there's just a lot of structure to them, and I love a good structure with my maps. But after that, we also played a little bit of 2v2 Gunfight on Training Facility, which is a brand new gunfight map. And while I think it's a nice 2v2 map, I really struggled with my gameplay. I swear I was getting like the best players that were at this event on the enemy team every single game I played on Gunfight. But I got a couple little clips here at least that I can share with you guys, just so you can get a general feel of what the map looks like. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the maps themselves. I'll just be transitioning between gameplays on each of these maps from here on out. Next, let's talk a little bit about the new guns. And while we are expecting 5 brand new guns throughout Season 1, unfortunately, in the build that we had access to, we were limited to just the MWIII, the XRK Stalker Sniper Rifle, and the Stormender launcher, which is an energy launcher that's not really designed to kill enemy players, just designed to take out streaks and equipment. And unfortunately, I actually forgot to use that launcher. I intended on doing it, but there was so much else going on, I just forgot to put it on my class setup, to be honest. So the vast majority of my gameplay time was using the MWIII. And here are the advanced stats with the MWIII. By the way, it also looks like we may be seeing improvements to the advanced stats page. We're getting a few more stats and a little bit more detail in this screen compared to what we have in the current build of the game. So I anticipate this is going to be coming to the game as well, but it's hard to tell when you're playing a dev build of the game. And just in case you didn't catch it, it looks like they added an upper leg damage multiplier to the advanced stats, so we can see a little bit more of a breakdown of what those stats look like. Also, the recoil control stats aren't just defaulting to 1 degree per second for every gun, and then you just see what attachments do to that from there. We're seeing actual values here, so we'll be able to compare guns with each other. And then finally, I noticed they added an empty reload time, so we don't just have our standard reload time, we also have our reload time when we fire the full magazine. In either case, when it comes to the MWIII, statistically, like time to kill wise, it's pretty good for an assault rifle, especially if you can land a headshot. Just one headshot up close is going to make a big difference. However, unlike most of the time when we have access to play the game early at a studio like this, we didn't have everything unlocked for us. And therefore I found without attachments, it was a little bit tricky using the Ram 7. I didn't really love the gun, and it wasn't necessarily that the time to kill was bad, it was mainly the recoil. The recoil was pretty high without attachments, or without an open selection to use whatever attachments I would like to use on it at least. So that definitely held it back. Well, that also combined with the fact that we had to use their controllers at the studio. We weren't allowed to use our own controllers this time, and therefore the analog sticks themselves had a very different feel, plus we didn't have access to paddles and all that stuff that we're used to. So definitely struggled a bit with that recoil, but I do think once you get some attachments on this, it'll actually be quite a good gun. As for the XRK Stalker sniper rifle, unfortunately the times where I did use this gun, they were on the Vortex maps, which are reskins of some of the current maps we have in the game, and we aren't allowed to upload footage of those maps. Those are coming later on in the season, and that just wasn't meant to be a focus of this event. They let us play around with them a little bit, but it was not for capturing purposes. All I can say about the XRK Stalker is it seems like it's just a good all-around Modern Warfare 3 sniper rifle, which I feel is kind of missing from the game in its current state, where it's just got like a solid one-shot kill potential, but it's also reasonable in the handling department. It's just a good all-arounder. And talking to some of the guys that are like dedicated sniper players that were at the event, they seem to enjoy this sniper rifle quite a bit. So that wraps it up for my impressions of the content that we got to experience that's coming in Season 1. Now let's finally get into all of the details of things that we learned about while at this event. Like I said, there was a Q&A session with this, and we did gather quite a bit of information on little things. And I mean, one thing that I think many people are going to be happy to see, maybe some people will be disappointed, is they're rebalancing the Riot Shield, finally, and they're doing exactly what I wanted them to do with the Riot Shield. What they're going to be doing with this is there's now going to be a movement penalty even when that Riot Shield's on your back. So no more turtling and still zipping around the map like a madman. You are going to be noticeably slowed down when you have a Riot Shield equipped, whether it's out or on your back. However, in order to compensate for that, and in order to not make the Riot Shield completely useless, they're also rebuffing the melee damage, so it's going to be a 2-hit kill with the shield again, unlike the current 3-hit kill. So it's actually going to be a little bit more powerful if you're using it as a shield and you've got it out in front of you, but it'll be noticeably nerfed for those people that are just using it for the sole purpose of having their back protected while using a regular gun in the game. So to me, this sounds great. I'm really excited to see what this change actually looks like in game, but on paper at least, it's sounding excellent. Next up, they did confirm that Cold-Blooded should be fixed for Season 1, so that's good news. We haven't had access to Cold-Blooded this entire game up until this point. And that's especially good because the Swarm is coming to the game, which, by the way, somebody did earn a Swarm in one of the games, but again, this was when we were playing on the Vortex map, so I can't show it to you. However, that one time that the Swarm was called in, it honestly didn't seem all that powerful. It only got, I think, like 4 kills for him. So I am curious to see more with this. Obviously, we just saw it called in once. Maybe he just happened to get unlucky that game and didn't get very many kills. So time will tell on this one, but I'm a little concerned this might not be as powerful as it should be for a super high-end streak. Additionally, in that same game, that player also earned an EMP, and the EMP is very powerful in the state that it was in the build that we played, because it eliminates literally every single heads-up display element in the entire game, including player indicators above their head, which means you can't even tell if you're shooting at a teammate or an enemy when an enemy has an EMP in the air. In fact, I don't think you even get hit markers that appear on your screen. There's just nothing. And that could be a problem, especially in hardcore game modes, because there is literally no way of knowing if it's a friendly or an enemy that you're looking at any given point with the EMP in the air. So I do think that needs a little bit of rebalancing. I would honestly be fine if it eliminated the enemy's diamond from above their head, but I think at least your teammate's dot still needs to appear so you can see that that's a teammate, and therefore you don't have to shoot literally every character model and listen for a hit marker. Next up, we did get to play around with the new vest, which is the Assassin Vest, and that was revealed last Friday. And this vest gives you access to gloves, boots, and 1 piece of gear, as well as 1 lethal, 1 tactical, and the only real restriction here is you don't get to use a field upgrade. And the perks with this are, first off, when you kill an enemy player, no skull will appear at the location for their teammates. And then second, and most importantly, you get permanent ghost while using this, even if you're stationary. And I talked a little bit about this on Friday, but I'm gonna say it again here. I think this vest may end up needing some more trade-offs. I think it's going to be a pretty big crutch for a lot of people, and not just a crutch, but also a crutch that potentially is just going to slow down the gameplay and lead to more camping situations, because you can literally sit in a corner now and be off the enemy radar, whereas without this vest, that wasn't really a possibility. So I'm not entirely opposed to a vest like this coming to the game. I just think it may need more of a trade-off than just losing access to a field upgrade. But that's just my opinion, and who knows, maybe it'll turn out to be not so bad. Next, I can finally talk a little bit about the Flamethrower Underbarrel. We didn't have access to use it in the build that we played, but the devs talked about this a little bit, and they specifically said, like, don't worry, we made sure that we didn't overtune this, and it's not going to be crazy powerful. They wanted it to be sort of like fun and gimmicky to use, but not like a highly competitive option, not a really frustrating option, so shouldn't be something that we have to worry about too much as far as something that'll break the meta or anything. Then they did touch on Covert sneakers a little bit in the Q&A session. Somebody basically asked, is bone conduction headset meant to counter Covert sneakers, and do they have any plans to make that counter it? And they were pretty clear that this is working as intended currently. Bone conduction headset isn't meant to counter the footstep volume of Covert sneakers, so it's not a bug or an oversight or anything. This is specifically how they intended to design the game. That doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't open to making adjustments down the road, but they did clarify that this was their design intention. After that, while we didn't get any specifics with this, they did mention there will be a bunch of weapon balancing with the Season 1 update. I'm hoping we get some patch notes on this with the details tomorrow perhaps, or if not then maybe the morning after. But with this, they basically just said, in general, assault rifles are going to be nerfed a little bit, and they're going to be coming down slightly, whereas SMGs in general are going to be buffed up a little bit. Now, that's just a general overview. There is, of course, going to be other weapon balancing that happens with the update as well. And another thing they mentioned is with certain guns, they're not actually going to be touching the gun so much as specific attachments that allow that gun to excel more than intended. So we're going to be seeing some attachment adjustments in this update as well. And then finally, something that definitely affects the competitive scene more so than public matches is they are going to be testing a nerf to snaking in the game, which is effectively just using a movement exploit for quick peeking over top of a piece of cover. And when executed properly, it makes you a practically impossible target to hit while allowing you to get plenty of information in the process, which again is something that's not going to affect regular public matches for most people very much. But on the competitive side, it's going to have a big impact. Essentially what they mentioned here is there will eventually be a penalty if you consistently abuse the snaking. As you continue doing it over and over again, it will just slow down for you, so you're going to be less effective with that snaking. And the way they talked about this is they really want to target snaking abuse without impacting the normal experience of players that may just crouch and stand up a few times simultaneously. They don't want to really punish people too heavily for that, but for the people that are just consistently snaking on a piece of cover over and over and over and over again, that's primarily what they're targeting with this. And they also mentioned this is basically just the first step, and adjustments will continue to be made if necessary. That actually reminded me, on a similar note, they did mention bunny hopping a little bit, which, just to clarify, bunny hopping is not the same as jump shotting. Bunny hopping is the ability to maintain momentum after the first jump shot, so you can chain jump shots together to some degree. In the game's current state, bunny hopping essentially just doesn't exist, because you lose almost all of your momentum when you land from a jump. And they said they are toying around with this a little bit, but they are having a hard time dealing with slopes especially. That causes some issues where if you're bunny hopping on a slope, you maintain way too much momentum, and that would make the bunny hopping way too powerful. So we may end up seeing adjustments to that down the road, but it looks like nothing really planned for Season 1. At least that's how it sounded based on the presentation they gave. And with that, that's pretty much it. That wraps it up for all of the important points that I took away from that Q&A session, as well as my thoughts and opinions on the Season 1 content that they gave us access to. Overall, I'm definitely excited to get my hands on some brand new maps that we've never experienced before in a previous Call of Duty game, because that's something we have yet to see in Modern Warfare 3. Now, of course, I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about Season 1 based on everything you've seen so far, especially now that you've seen actual gameplay on these maps? Are you generally excited for this season, or not so much? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.